This is the 26th of October. This is 2 days after I've landed in Vietnam. Percy and I, this is me mate Clive Percival, Percy and I were the only ones here for 2 hours before we were being both posted to the Commonwealth, to the command post signals to take over from the other blokes who had left today. And we've got 2 more today, so now that we've got 4 of us. And we have to man this place 24 hours a day, six hours a day each. It could be anything up to 3 months in this job, but it's only supposed to be for 3 weeks, but we don't believe that. It's as hot as hell here, very humid to make things worse, and we've got a fan down here in the hole in the command post which keeps us fairly cool, but it's very, very hot outside, especially during the day in the tents, even when we're on duty during the night. I've got to explain that we weren't sent there. I went there voluntarily with my mates. The half a dozen of us volunteered for overseas service, so that's what we did. And we wanted to go and see where the action was, and for whatever that meant. First helicopter ride I ever had in my life was in Vietnam. We had trained on plywood helicopters in Australia, because Australia at that time only had 6 helicopters, and they weren't going to waste them with us training on them. So we rode on American helicopters all the time. That was our chief transport system. So you go to the helipad on operations and get on your helicopter, 7 to the helicopter, and go, stick of 10 usually, sometimes smaller, depending on where their landing pads were. And they would come into a disused rice paddy or a cleared area, anywhere they could get down, and we'd get off and go off and do our task, which was just generally patrolling. So that's where we went. Occasionally, like in Coral, we went in on Chinooks, which, quite a big helicopter with blades at either end, and landed in because it was quite a big spare area there. And that was pretty common as well. When you're coming out on a helicopter, if it's a pretty hot area, you don't have any time at all to muck around. So you hide in the scrub, and the helicopters come in. Everybody rushes their helicopter and goes straight in the doors and try to get in there. Being one of the taller ones, at the end, I was always the last one on because you just get caught up in everything. So the technique was to rush at the helicopter, sort of turn in mid-air with your bum facing the chopper and land on the floor with your feet on the skids. You were the last man in. That was a technique. And coming in, if the pilots weren't sure of the ground, they would hover above the ground, and we would just simply jump out. So often with the grass, you didn't know whether it was 30 centimetres deep or 60 centimetres deep, so you didn't think about it. You just jumped. That's full pack and all your gear. And that's my abiding memory of that. When you're fully equipped up, if you sit down back against a tree for a rest, you cannot actually stand up again because it's just simply too heavy. You've got to roll onto all fours, grasp something and get up that way. This is just simply too heavy. Stuff here in the camp is fairly cheap, and we were paid in American military currency, which can be tendered anywhere in the country and has little or less value than Australian dollars. Cigarettes are 15 cents a packet, and cans of beer are 15 cents a can when you can get it. Stuff like lollies, chocolates, I believe, are hard to get, and I haven't been to a canteen yet where I've seen them. Usually one of the blokes goes over during the day and buys a few cans of soft drink at 15 cents each to drink during the day. The water here is not at all that good. They tell you to drink as least amount as possible. We don't get much of a chance to drink beer because we are usually on duty or just going on or just coming off. So no time for that. And then a couple of weeks later, I'm riding home again, and I make mention that I'm away with the Americans, the 3rd of the 5th Cavalry. This is on the 14th of November. We expected to be out for a month, but only stayed a week, and this was because the Americans had to go to the base for repairs, but we might go back if they want us again. We were about 7 miles north of here, which was a very long way in the jungle, so no roads or anything. We went in by the chopper and came back the same way, We were attacked. We were attached to the 3rd of the 5th Cavalry Unit from Bearcat, and they were trying to cut the jungle up into 1,000-metre squares to chase Charlie out. Also trying to find the headquarters of the 247 VC Battalion. We camped at night with them, and they had about 20 tanks of various sizes, and APCs, a bridge, and a helicopter. We went out on a patrol every day around them while they were breaking through the jungle. They had a fairly rough time. They lost 2 tanks and a couple of dead and wounded. I don't know what gives people the idea that the VC haven't got any arms. They had a gun big enough to knock out the tanks, and they put mortars on us one night and found the village from where the mortars came from the next day. The mortar cases and the bunkers, but we didn't find the mortar. They left in a hurry because they left their ox cart and their ox and food on the table. We blew it up with 4 cases of TNT to the bunker. And there's a lot more bunkers there where we were. Nearly all of them had lots of drugs in them, clothes, tools, and we got a lot of documents out of one. Had it hidden in a trapdoor under the fireplace. We also found a lot of propaganda in one. I found hidden in the grass roof, and I have a couple of posters, and we'll send them home for you. We found a lot of similar stuff just by the way of VC Village. About 3 or 4 grass roofs and bunkers underneath. So that would have been pretty commonplace. That's the stuff we did every day. And my abiding memory of all of that was just being so thirsty all the time and so tired and so hungry. Very, very tired. And people ask, how did you sleep in those sort of areas? Well, it just was not a problem. You just lay down and went to sleep. At the moment you lay on the ground, you were asleep. So, and as we progressed, as we got more and more experienced, you took less and less things with you on patrol, and you cut everything out to the last matchstick if you possibly could, so you took nothing superfluous. So I carried a camera in the first few months, and then as we progressed, I didn't take the camera any longer. It was just another thing to take, and you become more and more attuned to your environment. So you make sure that you got nothing shiny on, nothing that makes a noise, no jingling things on them. You just get less and less and less things to take with you. So initially you take a little hoochie thing with you to keep the rain off you, but towards the end, no. You just dug a shell scrape every night, which is about that deep, just lie in it like a very shallow grave, and you do that every night. But you just lie on the ground, you don't take anything else with you because it was just another few grams of stuff which you didn't need. But we were very fit at the time, so in the end, but towards the end, you didn't get stronger, but you become like an endurance fit, sort of marathon running fit type of thing. And I'm so sort of wondering how we did it, but I can remember we recovered so quickly, like being completely exhausted where you're lying down, you can't walk any further, and then 15, 20 minutes, you're up again, you're off. And I can recall taking over from a forward scout on one day, and he would walk, and I didn't do forward scouting. I was really the wrong shape and size. I was a radio operator and machine gunner different times. Walking past this guy, and he was completely exhausted. He was just lying on the ground like a dog, completely exhausted. But within a quarter of an hour, he would have caught up at the end and come up again and then took my position in an hour. But it was very, very hard going. It was primary jungle, extremely difficult. Forward scouting was the most dangerous of the job. You're the first one to be shot, usually. It was a highly dangerous job. But it had a lot of emotional content in it, because if you miss something as a forward scout, you put everybody in danger. So you had to be so alert and so bloody careful what you were doing. You need to count your steps all the time, so you knew how far you'd gone, because the man behind you has got a compass and he was trying to keep you on the bearing. You need to know, because once the firefight starts, the radio operator needs to send a location 8-figure grid reference in straight away so that you know where to go without call artillery in. And as I trained as a radio operator in Australia, I could do that job over there. So I could call in artillery or a Kazakh chopper to come in and get us out, or whatever the boss wanted. I could do that. And that was my training, which I didn't do a lot of it, because you tried to avoid being a radio operator if you could, because it was so bloody heavy carrying the radio with a spare battery. But you also attract a lot of the crabs from the other side, because they know what you're doing. If they can see an aerial, you're going to come under severe fire, so you're trying to avoid attracting attention to yourself. But just a word on bringing in, the sequence of bringing in a chopper, a Kazakh chopper, to get out wounded or dead. The sequence of that was to get this guy to circle around a bit, and then you would throw smoke grenade, and he would say, "I see red," and so he'd say, then you'd confirm that they'd come down, because the other side couldn't be listening on the radio, and if you don't tell them what colour you're going to throw, you just say you're throwing smoke, because the other side's also listening as well, and they could throw red, and he comes down with his chopper and they'll shoot him out of the sky. But the ones that flew the Kazakh choppers were the most skilled and courageous of all of the choppers by a long way too. And I can recall a guy, one chopper coming in, American one. Our guy wouldn't come in because we couldn't secure the area, and he was just flying past, and he heard us talking, so he came down and he sat just on top of the trees, probably about 40 feet up, 30, 40 feet up, dropped the cable down with a Stokes litter on. We put a couple of wounded blokes, winched them up, and one dead body, took him up. And I remember lying on the ground looking up at the skids, and you can see the skid against a piece of tree, and it was moving around probably at 50 millimetres either side. And when the winch comes on and the weight comes on, you can see the chopper move across maybe 150 mils and then straight back again. So he's a highly, highly skilled and disciplined person, because the other side have been shooting at him at the same bloody time. It's pretty difficult stuff to do. And that was common. Every Australian American soldier probably have seen that thing. I can recall looking at this guy, and this machine gunner sitting up there, looking down at me, and I'm thinking, I'm bloody glad I'm not up there, mate. She looks pretty dangerous. And he was looking down at me very sympathetically, saying, "Geez, I'm glad I'm not down there." So it depends on your point of view. So if he gets home, he gets to sleep in a nice warm bed and clean sheets and has a couple of cold beers, where I was just going to be in the dirt for another couple of weeks, whatever it was.